Social media application TikTok and the Kenyan government have agreed on establishing content moderation mechanisms for users in the East African nation. This follows concerns about the platform's explicit content shared by users, including minors. President William Ruto has also agreed with the CEO of TikTok that the social media company will establish an office in Kenya. Senior policy analyst at Access Now, Bridget Andere, joins us for more on this. Thank you very much, Bridget, for your time this afternoon. What do we need to understand about the content that is being exposed to not just users but consumers, including minors in Kenya, that has created this contention?
Thank you so much for having me. Well, of course, when you look at the petition that was delivered to Parliament a couple of days ago, some of the content that is being spoken about is, of course, hateful content, content that is said to be not appropriate, especially for minors, and also content that is disinformative. This is content that we've been talking about for many years, and it's nothing new in social media, if we're being completely honest. But one of the things that the petitioner alleges is that this platform is now getting out of hand with regard to the content that is being proliferated there, and that the government needs to step in and take control. And the way that they see this as being possible is through banning the platform.
Disinformative.
Yes, of course, when we talk about disinformation, there's a lot of research that has been done, not just on TikTok, but generally on other social media sites. This is a problem that we've seen, whether it is Twitter, whether it is Facebook, whether it is now TikTok. There's a lot of information that is shared day in, day out. And so, of course, it goes without saying that some of the information that is shared may not necessarily be accurate. And some actors we know will share this information that is inaccurate, willingly, or rather not willingly, but on purpose, just to kind of throw off people their scent, and spread some form of inaccurate information for their own ends.
Like you mentioned, it's not just this particular app, and so why TikTok?
In the last couple of years, it's not only TikTok that has been spoken about. It's not only TikTok that has seen calls for banning. If we go just less than a year ago during the Kenyan elections, there was a call to ban Facebook because of disinformation, because of spread of hate speech, and a lot of research that was showing basically the platform was not doing enough to combat this kind of issues. So, of course, with a platform like TikTok now, it's becoming a lot more widespread. A lot of users are joining it. Children are joining it. Minors are joining it. And, far be it for me to speak about the rights of minors because that's not really my area of expertise. But this is one of the things that is being brought up, that far beyond the general population, it is also children that are now at risk, and our values are at risk, and education is at risk, mental health is at risk. And so I think it's more of just the fact that this has now really taken hold. More people are using it across the population, and so someone has seen that this is obviously a problem.
Somalia, in fact, has banned TikTok as well as Telegram, and that was announced yesterday. Is there a relation, especially given the proximity of the two countries?
Well, of course, we've seen TikTok bans taking root all over the world. It's not just in Africa. And of course, now they're happening in different degrees. There are countries that have banned in totality TikTok. There are countries that have banned the use of TikTok on government devices, that is in the EU, in the US, not because of the content, but because of privacy concerns in some cases. So I wouldn't say that there's a direct correlation, but there's definitely a trend that we are observing around the world when it comes to platforms and how this moderation is being handled.
Sure. You spoke of values, education and mental health being threatened as some of the reasons why this call is gaining momentum. If we take a look at what TikTok is used for in China, do we know?
Sorry, I don't quite understand your question.
So in comparison to the kind of content that we're seeing being proliferated on the continent, is there a difference? Because some argue that in China, you don't see the same content that you see here. There's also quite strict regulation there. And so why is it that when it comes to, and I guess maybe it's on the part of each government to regulate, as Kenya is attempting to do?
Yeah, I mean, regulation is different in every country. I cannot speak on China's regulation because my work focuses on Africa. But what I will say is, of course, that now, if you look at Kenya in particular, or even just the general continent of Africa, TikTok and other social media platforms are used for so many, different uses. There's educative content. There's civil participation. There's just entertainment kind of content. So there's a lot of uses for it. At the end of the day, you cannot say that a platform in particular is causing mental health issues just by existing. There are certain things that need to be in place for that to happen. The overuse of those platforms, the misuse of those platforms. And so how much can the government also regulate is a question that we need to ask ourselves. There is a difference between regulation and over-regulation. Regulation also, has to pay attention to the rights that are contained in our laws. We have the freedom of expression. We have right to information. We have freedom to picket, freedom to organize and associate, things like this. Of course, they're limitable. So then how do we limit them? That needs to be the question that we're asking ourselves and that lawmakers need to ask themselves. The limitation has to be proportionate. It has to be necessary. It has to be legal. So banning an entire platform, that cannot be seen as proportionate. But putting in checks and balances, putting in transparency measures, not just on the government's part, but also on the platform's part, is something that we can do. And we have all of these recommendations that we're now gearing towards the platforms as well as lawmakers to make sure that they know that there is a different way to do this. Banning is disproportionate. Banning stifles human rights.
It's TikTok today, it's Tok tomorrow. What role do parents or even society as a whole, what role can we play, right? Because you find that young children have got gadgets these days, whether they need it for school or whatever else they need it for. They're likely to download these, even though you may put some restrictions on those gadgets, because these little ones are way smart, and this is their era, the technology era. And so when we speak of threatening values, mental health and education, and you speak of checks and balances, what is it that you and I, as members of society, can do?
Yeah, we just need to be more watchful. Me and you, we have a responsibility. Lawmakers have a responsibility. Platforms have a responsibility. So these three stakeholders have to work together to make sure that things are being done correctly on the apps. So on my part, what can I do? If I see content that is harmful, content that has disinformation, content that is inappropriate because maybe it's, content that's not supposed to be on a social media platform that can be accessed by anybody, I can report it. There are reporting mechanisms. Then what can the platform do? The governments do. The governments can work hand in hand with other stakeholders to make sure that they're not over-regulating and causing kind of a chilling effect on the freedom of expression or, any online activity that guarantees the human rights and freedoms. So we all have a role to play generally, is what I will say. If I can report something, I will report it. If the social media company can take it down before it is spread any further than it has been, let them take it down. If something can be regulated without causing a chilling effect on the freedoms and human rights, let it be done.
I'm curious about the threat to values. What values?
Well, the petition was talking mostly about, religious values, national values. Those are really abstract things that I don't think any laws should seek to regulate because they're extremely subjective. And if we start regulating or forming legislation or policy around values that people hold, that's an extremely slippery slope. And then it means that whoever has say, whoever has the power, whoever is in power, gets to implement their own values. And then what happens to the whole objective of the nation? What happens to how objective human rights are supposed to be in their application?
Does all of this suggest that and Kenya is quite a diverse and big nation, that there are sectors that are conservative. We can't put it in one umbrella and say, is Kenya conservative? But does this suggest that conservatism, if there's such a word, is quite big in the country?
I would shy away from saying it's big. Just that there is a section, as in any other country, there is a section of the country that has certain values, and they would like to push it down our throats. I think we need to stay objective, and especially lawmakers and people in power need to stay as objective as possible and make sure that whatever it is they implement, whatever it is they enact, is not to suit a few people to the detriment of many.
Thank you very much for your time. Bridget Andere, Access Now Senior Policy Analyst, joining us from Nairobi, Kenya.